Practice and Review, Chapter 17. Number 1. Potens quoque est vis artium, quae nos semper allunt. We have our relative clause here. We'll separate that by brackets. Est is the subject of the main sentence. Powerful to est vis artium, nominative, singular feminine. Powerful to is the force artium. It's your genitive, plural, feminine. Notice your I stem here. Powerful to is the force of the arts, quae. Quae nos semper allunt. In its own phrase, quae is the subject, which always nourishes us. Accusative, plural, could be masculine, could be feminine. But does quae refer to vis or artium? Because quae, let's face it, quae could be nominative, singular feminine, or it could be nominative, plural, feminine. The key is its use in its own clause. In its own clause, it is the subject, and the verb is plural, so therefore we must reject the singular. It is nominative, plural, feminine. What else in the sentence is nominative, plural? In other words, if its antecedent, if quae is nominative, plural, feminine, then its antecedent must be nominative, plural, feminine, and the only, or plural and feminine, not nominative, the only plural feminine noun we have is artium. Powerful to is the force of the arts, which always nourish us. Again, it's important to understand that how to get to the antecedent of quae. We've got two possibilities, two feminines, but we know that it's plural, so we must go to the plural feminine noun. Powerful to is the force of the arts, which always nourish us. Number 2, miseros homines autem secum jungere coiperant. We have our verb here, coiperant. Hopefully you recognize this ERA here in the middle indicates the pluperfect, had, and it's third person pluperfect, active indicative. Similarly, you recognize as you go through that miseros is not going to be the subject because it ends in an OS, modifies homines, so therefore that locks that into the accusative. They had begun, complementary infinitive. In other words, the present active infinitive. They had begun to join with themselves, moreover, pitiful, miserable men. They had begun to join with themselves, to align with themselves, miserable men. Number 3. Nam illa aetate pars populae in Italia jura quium numquam tenuit. We'll go straight to the verb. Tenuit, third person, singular, present perfect, active, indicative. We haven't gotten the subject yet because clearly nam is not the subject, it's just a word that means for. Illa, or particularly illa aetate, a phrase, is not the subject because it's the ablative. That long A makes it clear. And while we're talking about that, let's identify that as ablative, singular feminine, and we'll call it the ablative of time when. For, in that summer, in that age. Now we get the subject. Part, populi, genitive, singular masculine. This is your partitive genitive. Part of the people in Italy. Jura. What haven't we decided? We have our subject, which is nominative, singular feminine. This has to be the accusative, plural, neuter. Then we have the genitive, plural, laws or rights of the citizens. Never, your adverb, which equals never. So let's put it all together. We've analyzed everything. We know that, for example, illa aetate, in that age, in Italy, laws of the citizens, never. Let's just put it together and get the subject. Part of the people in Italy, in that age, never held the rights of citizens. For in that age, part of this people in Italy never held the rights of citizens. Number 4. Incipimus veritatem intellegere quae mentes nostra semper regere debet, et sine qua valere non possumus. We've read it through. Let's analyze this structure of the sentence first of all, because in reading it through, we recognize there's a quae debet et sine qua possumus. So we have two relative clauses, and we'll tackle them shortly. Let's go right straight for the main sentence. Incipimus. We begin, first person plural, present active indicative. And we are looking for, we begin something, we're looking for the complementary infinitive to understand. This is your present active indicative. We begin to understand what? Truth. Accusative, singular, feminine. Quae mentes nostra semper regere debet. I think we can grasp, we can catch on, truth which, but let's grammatically understand why the antecedent of quae is veritatem. Your verb in this relative clause is debet. What debet? Something ought. What ought? Mentes nostras, no, that's accusative. Quae, this is your nominative, singular, feminine. So you've got the singular feminine here, and singular feminine here. The antecedent of quae is veritatem. Remember, it gets its number and gender from its antecedent, and it gets its case from the use in its own sentence, which ought to rule, this is the infinitive, always, adverb, to rule what? Our minds, accusative, plural, feminine. We begin to understand truth, which ought always to rule our minds, and sine qua, this is singular feminine, its antecedent, therefore, is going to be singular feminine, is going to also refer back to truth, but in its own clause, it is ablative. And it's ablative without. And without which we are not able, valere, to be strong. I just took some more time on this sentence because I want you to understand how the relative pronoun works. In its own clause, it has its case, but the number and gender refers back to the antecedent, which I've highlighted in yellow. We begin to understand truth, which ought always to rule our minds, and without which we are not able to be strong. Number 5, quam difficile est bona aut dulcia ex bello trahere. Quam means how. How difficile, how difficult it is. What infinitive? The present active infinitive. To draw, to drag, bona, good things, or sweet things. These are both accusative, plural, neuter, your substantive use of the adjective, good things or sweet things, ex bello, out of war. How difficult it is to drag good things or sweet things from war. Number 6. Centum ex viris mortem diu timebant, et nihil clementiae expectabant. We've got two sentences. And again, start off analyzing the structure. There's some timebanting going on and expectabanting going on. This is your subject. This is your nominative. How do we know it's the nominative? Because centum is not declined, but 100 of the men feared death for a long time. And they awaited nothing of clemency, is what they would say, because nihil, they expected no clemency. We would say no clemency. We use the no as an adjective. But when you use nihil, the noun, you're going to use the partitive genitive. Let me make this more clear. They expected, you could say, nullam clementiam. That would be one way to say this. They looked out for they expected no clemency. But in this sentence, the author chose to say they looked out for nothing know nothing of your substantive, your partitive genitive, nothing of clemency. Frankly, in English, we translate them both the same way. They expected no clemency. They expected no kindness. But these are two ways to say it. And in this sentence, the author has chosen to use nihil, could have just as easily taken nullam. If you're asking what the difference is, in English there's no difference. The difference lies in Latin. 100 of the men feared death, and they expected no clemency. Number 7. Puer matrum timebat, quae eum saepe neglegebat. We have analyze the structure. Quae, go to you get the verb, great. The boy feared his mother, accusative, singular, feminine. Quae is going to be your subject because it's nominative. And you know it's singular because the verb is third person, singular, imperfect, active, indicative. So, quae, singular, feminine. If we go back to the number and gender, it's singular, feminine. This is its antecedent, singular, feminine, but within its own clause, this is your subject, who neglected him often, always. No, often, my mistake. The boy feared his mother, who neglected him often. 8. Inter omnia pericula femina fortis se cum sapientia gessit. Let's go straight for the verb, gessit. Who gessited, we don't know. In fact, we're a little confused because we've got an omnia, pericula, femina. All those A's go together. Let's think about our vocabulary. Inter omnia pericula. Inter takes the accusative. Omnia pericula are the accusative plural neuter. Among all dangers, now we get our subject, the woman. What kind of woman? She was a brave woman. Nominative, singular, feminine. The brave woman, she gessit. She carried herself. Accusative, singular, feminine. We use that phrase. The woman carried herself cum sapientia. Ablative, singular, feminine, with wisdom. What kind of ablative is this? What kind of ablative takes the cum? This is your ablative of manner. Among all dangers, the brave woman carried herself with wisdom. Number 9. Iter celer rumor acris mortis perengentes urbes cucurit. Here's your verb, cucurit. I hope that you recognize the cuckoo, this duplication here. Very often a sign of the perfect stem, and in this case it's the present perfect. Third person, singular, present perfect, active, indicative. And so, that's all this means. Idaque, and so. We begin sentences that way. And so, rumor. What kind of rumor? Swift rumor. Cucurited. Ran. We've neglected this acris mortis. What are you going to do with that? Genitive, singular, feminine. Acris modifies that. And so the swift rumor of the bitter death ran perengentes urbes, through the large cities, through the great cities. And so the swift rumor of the bitter death ran through the great cities. Number 10. Quoniam memoria factorum nostrorum dulcis est, beati nunc sumus, et senectutem faculem agemus. We've got a couple different sentences here. We've got, let's just look at the verbs. Est, sumus, agemus. Quoniam just means since. Okay, since est. Let's look at the verb something is. What is memoria? Memoria factorum nostrorum. This is genitive plural. Neuter. This is nominative singular feminine. Since the memory of our deeds is sweet. This is nominative singular by itself. We don't know if it's singular or feminine, but because it's an adjective, it goes back to this one. Nominative singular feminine. Since the memory of our deeds is sweet, beati nunc sumus, we are fortunate, blessed. And senectutem faculem, this is your accusative, singular feminine, and we will live. This is first person plural, future, active, indicative, and we will do. We will do an easy old age. I think the expression in English, we will have an easy old age, is a little better, even though strictly speaking, agemus doesn't mean have. Since the memory of our deeds is sweet, we are now blessed, and we will live, we will have an easy old age. We don't have to be racked by bad memories of bad deeds. Number 11, multi auditories, saturas, acres, timebant, quas poeta recitabat. Well, looking at the structure of the sentence, we see a quas, a relative pronoun. Let's separate that out. Timebant is the verb in the main clause. Multi auditores, this is your subject, nominative, plural, masculine. This is the same case, number and gender, it modifies it. Many listeners, many auditors or listeners. Many auditors, they, third person plural, imperfect, active, indicative. They feared what? Saturas, accusative, plural, feminine. What kind of saturas is? The bitter satires. Many listeners were afraid of the bitter satires. Quas poeta recitabat. Now we go into the clause. The poeta recitabated. Let's analyze quas. This is accusative, plural, feminine. So, as we know, the plural feminine, that comes from our antecedent. So, what else is in the previous sentence or in the previous part of the sentence is plural and feminine? The saturas, the satires. But yet it gets its case from its use in its own sentence, quas. The poet was reciting quas, them. Many listeners were afraid of the bitter satires which the poet was reciting.